can start. We can start. We're live. We're absolutely live. Excellent to see. Amazing to see. Brilliant. Stupendous. Over the moon. What's going on? What's happening? What's crack-a-lacking? It's your boy Agostino. This is Open Tabs number 12. Open Tabs episode number 12. I hope you are good wherever this may find you. I really do. I'm hoping you are top of the world right now. I'm going to do something I probably shouldn't do. Make sure this is working. Is it? It's a lot of buffering, isn't it? Oof. Let me maybe get this off the screen and see if this works. Is that working? I'm still buffering in it. Let's get this off the screen because the buffers are mad. Let's see if that works then. Is that alright? Hold on, brothers. Let's just muck around with these settings a bit and see what I go on and let's see if this works out. Should be working okay. We got the output. We got the streaming. 25 KB. Recording is the same. Okay. Bitrate on the streaming is a bit high compared to what the bitrate is on there. So maybe I should put it down to, and it's ultra fast. It's super fast on here. Maybe let's do ultra fast and bring it down to 2000, right? Let's see if that works. Apply. Okay. Hopefully this is nice and smooth now and you can see, man, innit? Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Fingers and toes. Fingers and toes. It should be okay. But yeah, Open Tabs number 12. Welcome back. Nice to have you. Hope you are well wherever this may find you. Let me know if you can hear me all right in the chat. That'd be much appreciated. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. You should be, because I can see myself nice and clearly on this little thing I'm using now right now at the moment. Everything looks like it's working pretty well. If it's not, then please do let me know. But yeah, Open Tabs number 12, innit? Many things to get in to talk about. I thought I'd do a little stream because I've got some other topics that I probably wouldn't necessarily fit into my podcast. Concerning Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub and that kind of stuff that I kind of try to not talk about too much now because I find it a little bit boring to go on about those guys again and again. You know, I like listening to Joe Rogan podcast itself, but Brendan Schaub and BYKE, I've kind of gone off that years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's something I stopped actively looking for time ago. Not because of it's not their fault. It's just kind of grown out of the show. Not really something that I kind of try and look back on, but it's always funny and interesting to put back on the BYKE subreddit from time to time and see what those guys are talking about. It might be one of the best subreddits out at the moment, especially concerning a particular show, the way they rip into it. The way they kind of, rip into all the associated acts that come around with that show as well. Just, it fills me with joy. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely one of the better places to go and visit, especially if you're, on the shitter for a while. Checking out the Fire and the Kids subreddit is definitely a great option for your entertainment needs, I would assume. But yeah. We're back, Open Tabs number 12. As per usual, this is more of a loosely themed show. I've obviously got loads of topics that I want to talk about, most of them on my Open Tabs on Google. So I do that and just kind of run through some of the most pertinent stuff on the show. As per usual, if you're watching this, wherever you may be live, then make sure you are smashing the like button for me and sharing it with all your friends and family or whoever. No, not actually friends and family, your friends. Don't share it with your family because I'm going to be talking about some not too family-friendly topics. So maybe just keep it to your friends. That would be greatly appreciated. I don't want to embarrass anyone's family members by some of the content that I might be sharing on here and some of my views that might not be the most politically correct. But yeah, thank you again for tuning in, all 7 of you. I am very, very grateful to have you here with me. Is the bit rate alright? Is the frame right? I think the frame's alright. I think it should be okay anyway. Who gives a crap in it? Let's just double check and make sure I got the settings. So there should be. I don't think you can change settings on the video via streaming output, can you? I don't think so. I think it all kind of stays the same. The streaming is that, the thing is that, the recording is that. Yeah, it's the same, isn't it? Yeah, it's the same. So it should be perfectly fine. There shouldn't be anything super wrong going there. I don't think so. But that aside, Hope everyone is well. Let's just dive on deep in it. Let's get in. Let's get involved in the show. Why not? Let's start. And there's no better place to start on this show today. No better place to start than this breaking news that's obviously been spread all across social media. Have you guys seen this? This is the breaking news that everyone actually wanted to see, right? Let me just get this over here. Bear with me 1 second. This is the breaking news that's been on everybody's tongue today. Have you seen this? Absolutely scenes, and absolute scenes. There's courtesy of the New York Times. It says Joe Rogan, a podcasting giant who has been dismissive of the vaccine, has COVID, right? And if you're, again, I'm a fan of Joe. I have to be honest. I'm a big fan of the show. I listen to it all the time. I think he's got great guests. I love the guy. I think he's super motivational, super inspirational in everything that he's done and everything he's achieved so far. Somebody that I definitely listen to when it comes to certain topics. But even I have to admit, as a fan, it's quite exhausting hearing him talk about COVID. It's quite exhausting hearing him talk about the vaccine. And it's quite exhausting hearing about him talk about alternative medicines. And also it's quite exhausting just hearing him talking about the full stop pandemic thing, all things included, because essentially he's a multi-millionaire. He probably is close to approaching being a billionaire if he just keeps doing what he's doing. He'll probably approach that pretty soon. So to hear him talk about the struggles of the pandemic and how it's affected his career and all this sort of stuff, it's just a little bit, it comes off a little bit, how could I say it comes off a little bit lacking in perspective, right? It comes across a little bit tone deaf in that regard. But the one thing that I do like about the guy is that he is one of the only people with his platform, the only people as famous as him, who's really going out there and talking quite openly and very forthrightly about the need to talk, about the importance of health and fitness when it comes to COVID. No one really speaks about that. You'll see stories about somebody passing away due to COVID. They're fairly big. They weren't necessarily healthy. They didn't work out, and unfortunately, the virus got them. And the consequences were quite grave. And no one really wants to talk about the factor that their weight played in it. Maybe because they don't want to. Obviously, the timing is pretty bad, and it's obviously done in poor taste. But in general, people want to avoid talking about health and fitness because I don't know. I really don't have an actual reason why, or think of a reason why they don't want to talk about it. But for every reason, it doesn't seem to be the topic of conversation at the moment. Cool, that's fine. So Joe Rogan's voice is needed because he's the only one with his platform talking about health and fitness. Fine. But these personal anecdote things that he keeps sharing with people about friends that he's known who've got the vaccine and somehow lost their hair or couldn't bench and couldn't do kettlebell swings just gets annoying. And the most recent example of it was when Dr. Rhonda Patrick was on, who happens to be one of Joe Rogan's favorites, right? It's sort of like his kind of the person that he sort of touches base on when he wants to talk about certain studies that have to do with maybe losing weight, getting ripped, working out more, kind of full body human optimizations kind of things. And Rhonda Patrick seems to entertain all that kind of stuff because she's a fairly curious person. But she's also one of Joe Rogan's rare circle of friends who happens to be fairly pro-vaccine, right? Which I was surprised by. And she comes on the show and she's talking about the importance of it. And just basically from my just how I understood it, she kind of has the same opinion that I have, is that no matter what the other solutions are out there, the best solution we have so far in getting the world back to some semblance of normality is, it's a vaccine, right? It's the best thing we have at the moment. It's the best sort of weapon we have to defeat this virus, quote unquote. So she's talking quite vociferously about it because she thinks that more people should be pushed or should be encouraged to get the vaccine because that's the only way we're going to get back to some semblance of normality. And Joe's throwing all these anecdotal points and whatever, and it just feels a bit like, let the woman speak, number one, and also no one cares about your anecdotal stories, right? Because for the most part, these anecdotal stories don't apply to the large swaths of the population or in people in general, and also they don't really serve anything, right? There's people that you hear, unfortunately, who pass away from a nut allergy from eating a sandwich in Pret. These stories happen, but these anecdotal stories shouldn't kind of form the basis of how they make their sandwiches, right? Especially if it affects such small number of people. But anyway, he ended up getting COVID, and it's funny because, again, prior to, I think maybe on the same episode of Rhonda Patrick, he does say he says something without saying it, but he basically intimates that the reason why he hasn't caught COVID, he says basically his entire family got COVID, his daughters, his wife, loads of people close to him, but he kind of avoided it. And the reason why he says he avoided it is because of his rigorous routine of going in the sauna. Remember all that ice bath things that he was doing with his fucking really long nipples and all that malarkey? That's what basically allowed him to avoid getting COVID. And then suddenly out of nowhere, he comes back off the road and he makes this video where he basically tells everybody, he announces to the world that he's got it. And it seems like everybody that's not been a fan of Joe these last couple of months during the pandemic has taken the opportunity to basically dance on his quote-unquote grave. And here's an article courtesy of the New York Times. It says the following: Joe Rogan, the podcasting giant who has been dismissive of vaccination, has COVID. It's Joe Rogan, the host of the hugely popular podcast Joe Rogan Experience, said on Wednesday that he had tested positive for the coronavirus after he returned from a series of shows in Florida where the virus is rampant. So let's just check out what he actually says in the video, because we don't want to hear what these bloody cunts from New York Times are going to say. So here's what Joe said himself, direct from the horse's mouth. And horse is a great term to use because he is very keen on that horse medicine to get him good.
Friends. So I got back from the road Saturday night, feeling very weary. I had a headache and I just felt just run down. And just to be cautious, I separated from my family, slept in a different part of the house, and throughout the night I got fevers and
a different part of the house means a different wing, right? Joe Rogan steps in a different wing. This is the reason why, again, I love the guy. He's one of my favorites. I love him. I've been listening to the podcast for years. He introduced me to MMA, introduced me to UFC. He got me into many, many different things, but he has been unbearable during COVID, unbearable during the pandemic, unbearable. And for some whatever reason, he seems to be completely unaware that he is a multi-millionaire who has the ability to live wherever he wants. His lifestyle and his way of life is kind of, minimally affected by the pandemic in the first place. He lives in a country where you can move to a state where essentially the rules don't apply. Like, he's free to do whatever he wants, and he lives in a mansion where he can effectively live in one wing and not have any contact with his family and be pretty decent.
Sweats, and I knew what was going on. So I got up in the morning, got tested, and turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pack.
No vaccine though. Interesting. But I wonder if that's just a general thing that people do when you get COVID and you got money. I guess you can't just get the vaccine straight away. You'd have to kind of go through, I guess, right? Is that right? Or I don't know what happens. I guess you have to go through a course of medication before you get the vaccination at the end. I guess the vaccination wouldn't really serve any purpose after you got the virus, obviously. But it's interesting that he's so quick and so ready and willing to jump on the course of medication, whether it's doing the IV drip stuff that all those guys do in order to make sure they can go out and take Viagra and smash flipping prostitutes in hotels all over Las Vegas. I don't know why else people would do that sort of thing, but hey, whatever. And then, but then when it comes to the vaccination, he's so hesitant. It's just funny. And it's also funny because you already know how many people he influences, like, by his decision making. This is probably why people don't like him, but just his circle of friends, about how he looks at certain things, right? Because he runs and works out, he influences other people to do the same sort of thing. But the rules don't apply to you the same way, because obviously, again, this guy has many, many influential and really smart people on his speed dial who can basically help him through this entire thing and be okay.
Prednisone, everything. And I also got an NAD drip and a vitamin drip, and I did that 3 days in a row.
Again, I'm from the UK, but for my American viewers out there, am I not mistaken if I say that most people that get COVID don't get these level of treatment? Because of course you have to pay for it, I'm assuming, right? A lot of the stuff you have to pay for, a lot of the stuff you probably have to go to, like I'm not sure a private clinic exists. I guess they do exist over there. But do you know what I mean? It's not something that you can get on your healthcare plan at work. This is something that you can only get if you're Joe Rogan and you've got access to these amazing doctors and scientists and shit. So he's able to get all this stuff, right? So he was able to get all this stuff beforehand to prevent him getting it. And he was able to live in a different wing of his house if he felt a little bit sick. He was able to do shows in front of crowds that were all tested. He was able to do all these things that basically allowed him to live a life where he had a bubble around him. And still he was going on his show and telling people that if you're fit and healthy, you shouldn't get the vaccine. I love Rogan, yeah, but he's a piece of shit, innit? And he still ends up getting it anyway. Honestly, this guy is an absolute. He's a person. He is a definitely person in it.
And so here we are on Wednesday, and I feel great. I really only had one bad day.
Of course
Sunday
he does.
sucked.
Of course he
but
does.
Monday was better. Tuesday felt better than Monday, and today I feel good. I actually feel pretty fucking good. That's the good news. The bad news is we have to move the Friday show in Nashville. It's going to move to Sunday, October 24th. So that will be the new Nashville date. My apologies to everyone. Obviously, there's nothing that I can control. It is what it is. Crazy times we're living in. But a wonderful, heartfelt thank you to modern medicine for pulling me out of this so quickly and easily. And my love to all of you. Thank you. Bye.
What a bizarre human being, isn't it? I love the guy, but what a bizarre human being. Like, legitimately bizarre human being. Just the other day, he was telling people that he avoided getting it because he runs a couple of 5Ks and does a couple of kettlebell swings in the morning. It's just, I don't know, man. I think some of these people are, I wonder if it's just a pandemic and because everyone was cut off from access to their friends and family, that it made everyone go a little bit loopy, right? And it sometimes affected people in different ways. Some people just lost their ability to make sense of the world. They lost their ability to think critically. I don't know what it is, but it done something to people's brains, because usually Joe Rogan's a pretty smart dude, but for some reason the pandemic just turned him into a little bit of a doop. Do you know what I mean? Real dude. Don't get me wrong, I do give the guy credit for being honest up front and saying you got it. A lot of people lied and say they didn't get it when they did have it. Fair play, good on him. And also talking about, you know, where he went, the risk that he took, and blah blah, whatever. Cool, medicine, yeah. But that's definitely a thumbs up on that one. But from what we can ascertain so far, we can know that most likely Rogan doesn't have the vaccine, probably still isn't going to get it, and is going to try and recover off the back of this like cocktail of medicines that he's going to, you know, subject himself to, including that horse one. What is it? In Revitrain, whatever it's called. He's definitely going to end up doing that, and you know he's going to end up doing that. Let me quickly read through some of these comments, because they're coming in thick and fast about Rogan catching COVID. What's everyone saying here? Anthony says Rogan's out of touch with how normal people are. I definitely agree with that. Boxing Bulldog says everything is anecdotal with Rogan. Yep. Jones, LOL. Rogan is not healthy as everyone thinks he is. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I guess he is in terms of a person his age, but I guess if you're a person his age, you probably don't have the access to the stuff that he has access to, and you don't have the the benefit of being able to take, what is it, HGH or whatever he's on, in order to kind of look the way he does. Don't get me wrong, he's definitely still works out super hard, because I don't think working out as much as he does with the money he has is easy, right? Anyone can work out now when you've got a 9 to 5, because there's basically a way to escape the drudgery of your everyday existence. But if you've got 100 or 500 million dollars in the bank and beautiful kids and a nice wife and a great house somewhere in Texas and loads of other houses, and you go on holiday whenever you want, getting up in the morning and doing, a grueling workout and punt, on a heavy bag, or, flipping, like I said, like those gorilla kettlebells and dumbbells and whatever he's doing, it does require a lot of determination, a lot of willpower. So the fact that he can do it is definitely something that's commendable. It continues here. Anthony Macaldo says anything with COVID these days seems to be based on evidence. True. He says here you can't get the vaccine if you have COVID. Okay, it's good to know. So hold on, if you get COVID and you recover in America, can you still get the vaccine, or they don't let you get it anymore? I don't understand that. I'm sure you can still get it, right? Or are you not? Or you're not meant to get the vaccine after you have COVID in general. Full stop. I guess that's where the antibodies come in. You're meant to have antibodies because you've had the virus already. So why should you get the vaccine? But I guess if you want to have an extra layer of protection, you should get it. I think that's what I remember Brendan Schaub saying he did, didn't it? And then he kind of backtracked, I think, recently with the show he did with what's his name, Andrew Schultz. I think Andrew Schultz was trying to put him in the corner, but basically, from what we can ascertain, Brendan Schaub didn't get the vaccine, probably isn't going to get it, which is fair, understandable. But I think if you got the vaccine and then you want to go and work and around people and hospitality and shit, it probably is beneficial for you to get it, just so you can move around, and not for any other health reason, just so you can do your job, I'd assume. what they say here. Sebastian says maybe TRT is the answer to fighting off COVID. True. Anthony Mercado says I tested positive for COVID 2 weeks ago, and all the doctor did was call me in to see if I had any symptoms. There were no recommendations, and he didn't even say go back to get a test. Oh, weird. Boxing Bulldog says this guy's completely out of touch with reality, and yet somehow appears to be an average man. Nobody other than very rich people can take all that stuff that he took to combat COVID for sure. Jones says horse dewormer is a no-no. Anti-Michael says 3 weeks after you test negative. Okay, cool. Okay, 3 weeks after you test negative, you can go get the vaccine. Okay, makes sense. They tell you to wait a bit before getting the vaccine. Yeah, fair. Again, like I said, maybe I'm in the minority, but I do think it's great that he's one of the only people out there talking about health and fitness. I think it's important when it comes to COVID because people don't want to speak about it. I know maybe it's in poor taste. You don't want to talk about somebody's weight after they just pass away, right? Because, you know, who does that kind of thing? But it is important to talk about that, you know, it is disproportionately affecting people who are obese, who are obviously not healthy, who have pre-existing conditions or pre-existing health conditions that maybe could be alleviated prior to maybe COVID being around or whatever it is. So that's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. But it's just the arrogance that this guy had prior that's just really, really hilarious, right? So let's play a little clip of Joe Rogan talking to Dr. Rhonda Patrick on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, right? And he's being a bit of a cunt. And this clip again is highly edited and clipped up to make it seem like he's cutting Rhonda Patrick off a lot, but he's not. They just cut it to make it look like he is. But essentially, this is the gist of the interview, where he's basically trying to push anecdotal evidence towards, you know, somebody who, you know, claims to be a doctor in an effort to kind of, you know, speak his piece about it. So I'm going to play it now. It's from Reddit. So hopefully they won't take me down for it, but let's play Joe Rogan, you know, talking about the pandemic, his anecdotal evidence when it comes in the face of somebody like Rhonda Patrick talking about the vaccine. So let's hear what he has to say.
Do you think that vaccines are harmful to anyone?
Well, of course. I mean,
do you know anyone that's had bad reactions to vaccines? You would feel differently if you knew someone that had had a stroke or someone who's had heart attacks, perhaps young people that have?
Well, it's hard to say. I think the last I saw it was like 50 per million, which it's still rare, and it's
happened to 2 people that I know.
So
do you know anybody that had COVID and got through it with almost no symptoms at all and was very mild?
Well, yeah, no symptoms.
You don't know anybody that didn't have that?
I don't, because most of the people I know.
There was a couple of days where everybody around me got it, and a couple of days of my workouts felt really shitty, and I just took it real easy, and I continued the same stuff that I always do in terms of my protocol, like with the sauna and all the other stuff that I do, and vitamins and supplementation, and my whole...
I guess vitamin D didn't stop it, innit? Vitamin D, saunas, cold baths, and all that nonsense. That's probably why he was pushing it so much, right? He might have even felt groggy back then. Maybe he had bits and pieces of, you know, maybe it was a kind of premonition. Remember when he was doing all those really weird videos where he was challenging himself to conquer his inner bitch on Instagram. Again, don't get me wrong, I love the guy, but, you know, some of that stuff is so cringe. But again, he's American, and they have a different sort of temperament when it comes to that kind of stuff. And, you know, he's probably bored at home, nothing to do. So I get it.
Family got it. I never got it.
Well,
but also people that have had natural infections and then have the vaccine have a much higher likelihood of getting an adverse side effect.
Do they?
Yes.
I don't.
A good friend of mine who's an elite athlete
Yes.
infected with COVID. It was nothing. He breezed through it, and then he got vaccinated, and he was wrecked for 11 days.
Again, I don't know, man. It's just imagine inviting Rhonda Patrick on your show and asking her about COVID and stuff, and, you know, having wider conversation around it, and then just bombarding her with all your stories about your friends, like most of which are flipping comedians who just didn't take it seriously enough. Brendan Schaub being a big example of it, right? He thought it was it was a joke, you know, why it wasn't a big deal, didn't affect no one. Once upon the lockdowns, goes to do his shitty shows and ends up catching it, and then pretends like he's not the one that spread it to his entire crew, and then goes and then I think when he got it, he didn't even quarantine. He just continued riding his bike and going outside still, like just an absolute nuts, isn't it, of a situation. But let's go back to the article and hear what New York Times say, because I'm sure they're going to be super happy that he got it, right? Which is really, really is funny. But the New York Times, as I say, the following. Let's scroll down. The New York Times say he took coronavirus tests the next morning that came back positive, he said, and it's unclear if he has been vaccinated against COVID. But in an episode of his podcast in April, he mentioned that children had experienced mild COVID symptoms early in the year, or in the pandemic, sorry. In this video on Wednesday, no, let's skip ahead, we said that. The list of treatments he mentioned, monoclonal antibodies, which have been shown to protect COVID patients scroll down, at risk of becoming ill, and prednisolone, a steroid widely accepted as a COVID treatment. When Donald Trump was stricken with the COVID during the presidency, he was also treated with monoclonal antibodies. Oh, the Donald Trump thing is a good example, because if I'm not mistaken, do you remember when Trump got COVID? Am I incorrect in saying that some doctors came out, or somebody leaked news that if he wasn't the president, that most likely he would have passed away because of how seriously it hit him, but because he was able to have, some of the best doctors in the world attending to him with some of the, cutting edge, medicines in order to kind of get him better, he recovered in record time because of that. But it really did affect him badly because, of course, he's severely overweight, doesn't work out, doesn't believe in working out, and eats McDonald's every day. So it did make some sense. So all this stuff that Rogan's boasting about is stuff that's not accessible to the regular person on the street. Same way when it happened to Donald Trump. So when those guys are talking about, people should be free to live their lives and not wear a mask, it's like, yeah, it's all right for everybody else, because it's all right for you because you don't have to work in Walmart, right? You don't have to go to the construction site. You don't have to go to the schools and whatever, to local town halls and be interacting with people. You can just basically isolate yourself in your bubble, go to your little private golf clubs and member clubs in general, and live a life of, pampering and luxury without being exposed to real average everyday people. I definitely understand the frustration in that one. And it continues there, says Mr. Rogan also said that he received a vitamin drip, as well as however you say that word, ivermectin. Is that how you said it? Ivermectin, a drug primarily used as a veterinary deworming agent. The Food Drug Administration has warned COVID-19 patients against taking the drug, and that has repeatedly been shown as ineffective from them in clinical trials. However, it is a popular subject on Facebook, Reddit, and among conservative talk show hosts, and some toxicologists have warned to surge of reports of overexposure to the drug by those who obtain it from livestock supply stores. So people, honestly, human beings are mad. People would much rather buy this ivermectin from the dark web, right, or from horse flipping or from livestock supply stores, instead of just taking the vaccine, because they're afraid the vaccine might do what to them? Might make their hair fall out, might make them grow a flipping 5G antenna in the back of their backs. Like, honestly, human beings never cease to amaze me. It's just amazing the things that we kind of get hung up on. The same way how, some of my kind of drug addict friends who go out on the weekend and do, flipping lines of coke every weekend and party are the ones who are really adamant against taking the vaccine. It's like, dude, where do you think your cocaine comes from? Do you think your cocaine is like, what's that thing called? There is no such thing as fair trade Class A drugs, you know what I mean? Your stuff is coming literally off the backs of migrants, do you know what I mean? It's your stuff that's had to come in your little baggie has probably cost the lives of many different people. People have probably gone fatherless because of you wanting your little gram to go out on a night out, but then those people are very hesitant to take the vaccine. I don't really know what it's about. Maybe it's cognitive dissonance. I'm not too sure what it is, but that's just interesting to see people legitimately buying medicine, or what they claim to be medicine, from a horse supply store, from a livestock supply store, and being okay with it. It's just wild. It says here, Mr. Rogan was traveling nationally with his Rogan, the Sacred Clown Tour. He was scheduled to perform a show in the comedian David Chappelle in Nashville, Tennessee on February, but said his video on Wednesday that he was postponed to October. His podcast is effectively a series of wandering conversations, often over whiskey and weed, on topics. The show was licensed by Spotify last year for an estimated $100 million deal. His comments on the show in the spring undermining the value of the vaccinations for young, healthy people drew condemnation from the Biden administration and Prince Harry and other pods. What? Prince Harry, fuck Prince Harry. But again, I don't mind it. It continues here. Mr. Rogan has offered refunds to fans who bought tickets to an upcoming show. Mr. Rogan said on his new podcast last week that 13,000 tickets to the show had already been sold out, but because he opposed his vaccine requirements, he would offer refunds. Holy shit. If someone has an ideological or philosophical reason for not getting vaccinated, I don't want to force them to get vaccinated to see the show. And now they say that everybody has to be vaccinated, and I want everyone to know that you can get your money back. Interested to know. That's what I want to know. I want to know if he's going to change his stance on that sort of stuff. Do you think he's going to, once he recovers, or if he runs into some difficulty recovering, or do you think he's ever going to change his position like this, where he's going to require his fans that do come to go watch him when he goes on tour and does his comedy specials, so he does his comedy tours with Dave Chappelle, or if we want people to get vaccinated? I don't know. Because from what I remember, Dave Chappelle shows that he did during the entire pandemic, he was doing them more so outdoors to get people to have fun and shit, right? So in order for people to go out and still see a show and for him to perform, he do these shows outdoors, because the thinking was at that time you couldn't catch COVID outdoors because the air and whatnot, blah blah blah, airborne virus. Obviously maybe that stuff has maybe changed so since then, but it was never billed as like a I want everyone to come so I'm doing it outdoors tour. It was more so because of the kind of restrictions, and because we can't do the tour indoors in a normal comedy club or an arena, we're going to do them in these fields and have you wear a mask, sort of like, you know, in just a gesture, just a kind of a performative thing, so then we can just do whatever we want to do. But I wonder, will Joe change his stance on that? Will he change his stance? Probably not. I doubt it. I doubt that's going to happen. Somebody that's in this position is probably going to just figure out a way of making it work for him, and he's probably, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. Let's go into the chat and see what people are saying here. Joe's so arrogant sometimes with his guests that he actually know what they're talking about. Very true, says Antine Machado. A person called Sephiroth says, I don't know, the level of capitalism and uncompetentness in the part is what makes opportunities in countries like the US brilliant and powerful. However, by balance also makes us evil. He says, I personally never tell people otherwise. I'm the exception here, clearly, and I'm personally content with my own part of countless sacrifices. Sebastian says he for sure do not have to worry about the public transportation either. He says, just ask my Louis Vuitton tracksuit how much I'm wearing, type this, 6K. Cool. What is this one? I don't know. Someone, Sebastian said, I don't think he will change his position. He will just say, I got COVID, felt bad for one day, and that was it. Yeah, that's what's probably going to happen. I hope it doesn't. I hope he's really honest about his lasting after effects, because a few of those people in that comedy community have been pretty quiet about how COVID has negatively affected them going forward. I think I've heard Brendan maybe Brian Callen mention in passing how he still hasn't got his taste buds back or his sense of smell. And for a Brian Callen character, somebody who purports to be quite cultured and enjoys his wine and cheese and whatnot, imagine just losing, you know, the capacity to really taste properly, right? And to really smell food. Like that must be debilitating if you're an actual foodie and you love going to restaurants and bars and stuff. That must be horrible. And again, they don't want to say it, because if they say it, it's going to make them look bad, right, in one way, because they've obviously had a very anti-lockdown, anti-vaccination kind of stance about things, and obviously they've done it more so people can come out and buy tickets to attend their shows, which is wild to me in that regard, right? That all these comedians were doing everything under their power to fly around the world to do comedy shows while the world is on fire. That definitely is a good representation of how people act in general, right? The world's on fire, but let me get mine, and then we can go back to paying attention and all that sort of stuff. It's just nutty. To end, it says Rogan returned from performing 3 shows last week in Florida, where the state is reckoning with its largest or highest ever surge in virus infections, according to a New York Times database. Now, I don't like this sort of stuff, right? Because it says infections, it never says deaths. So I think sometimes the news can be a little bit purposely misleading with this sort of stuff. They never really talk about deaths. They always talk about cases and hospitalizations, but talk about deaths because people for sure get really sick and they get holed up in hospitals. But sometimes, you know, if they're fortunate and medication and they're looked after pretty well, they can leave, right? They can make a full recovery. Now, maybe there are some long COVID symptom consequences or reactions that you get held with over time. No one's denying that. But the idea that, you know, look at this number. Even as the case continues to rise with more than 15,600 people hospitalized with the virus across Florida, Ron DeSantis has held firm on banning vaccines and mask mandates. Florida deaths are considerably higher than those in any other state in the country. Cool. But when you put that number 15,600, you're making it seem as if these are the amount of people that are dying from COVID, which it clearly isn't happening, right? There's obviously a high number of cases, which is not good. High number of hospitalizations, which is not good because the beds are going to be full up. But I wish the news would be a little bit more fair and just talk about stuff a little bit more balanced and talk about the case and talk about the deaths more. Talk about the deaths in the same way you're talking about the cases. Just do that in general, because I think that will definitely help things. But there's no denying that people like Joe have played an interesting role in how COVID has gone about over there in the US. And I think is there one more clip here concerning Joe we want to talk about, and I think that's it in it concerning the whole Joe thing. But yeah, what's the theory? What's to end it? To end it, I would say more than likely he's going to be one of those guys that probably gets over it really quickly, right? I think he'll probably have it for a couple of weeks, feel a bit shit, and then he'll go back to normal. I'm pretty sure this is Joe Rogan after all. He'll be completely fine. He's got the great people around him. Guests he's had at his show will definitely help him out. I'm sure he's had people behind the scenes reaching out and, you know, offering their assistance. Cool. I'm sure that'll be okay. And I think he'll probably double down on his position when he gets back on his podcast. I don't think he's going to change his stance on how, you know, the pandemic was dealt. Lockdowns, restrictions, mask mandates. I think he's still going to say that stuff. I think he'll say, oh, what's the point of a mask if we're all going to get it anyway? That kind of sort of stuff. And in general, we're still going to be in the same position where we are now. Mass, you know, loads of really conflicting evidence, loads of really conflicting bits of information, people not really telling you the whole truth of the situation, and you having to really make up your own decision for the betterment of your own family and friends, basically. That's where we're at, basically, isn't it? We have all the information we need. You have to basically pass through it and figure out what works best for you and your family. That's it. Because if you try and listen to your leaders, they're all leading you astray. If you try and listen to people that you might look up to in media and entertainment, they're all kind of self-serving in that regard. So you really shouldn't listen to them, because the reason why a lot of these entertainer guys are pro opening things up is because they want you to go to their shows and buy their tickets and pay for their merch and show and see their specials. Let's be honest, right? They don't want to reopen the world for the betterment of society. So if that's the case, you really have to be selfish and really look at the data, analyze it as best as you can, and try and make a decision that best serves you and your family. That's it. All the other stuff is just complete noise, because again, the news especially is just horrendous when it comes to dealing with COVID. They have absolutely no agenda other than just generating outrage. Do you know what I mean? Nothing else. And you don't want to listen to your crazy aunt on Facebook because she's your crazy aunt on Facebook. So God bless you all out there, especially for those people in America. It sounds like it's a confusing place to be in terms of passing through all the good information, but I'm sure there are resources out there that you can dig into that will definitely make it far more easier of a situation to go through. I'm hoping for you and I'm praying for you. Fingers crossed. Stay strong, my friends. Stay strong. Then next we want to talk about, I thought what was funny, which was hilarious, is this weird beef that's been going on with Ariel Helwani and flipping Brendan Schaub. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what started it. I'm not sure if there's something else going on behind the scene that we don't really actually know about. But regardless, there was this clip that was posted on the Fire and the Kids subreddit. Again, the best subreddit in the world. If you're not subscribed over there already, get in tune. Join the homeless cats over there. PF Chang's for life. It's Dicey Baba, all that good stuff. One of the best subreddits. And they posted this clip from the fight companions that Brendan Schaub does now, I guess because he's taken over the fight companions from Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan supposedly said he's too busy to do them, which I don't really buy. I just think he didn't want to do them with Brian Callen because he got accused of rape, right? That's just probably, you know, when you just sign a deal with Spotify and you got $100 million in the bank, the last thing you want to do is sit down with somebody that's been accused of the R word. I mean, you don't want to do that. And of course, he probably knew that more likely than not doing those kind of shows would bring too much negative attention to him. I'm sure the stipulations of that contract and the payments maybe put in place some things, some trigger points. If you hit those, then maybe it might void the contract. I don't know. But regardless, he doesn't do Fight Companion anymore. Brendan's doing it now. And he did a Fight Companion the other day, I think, for the Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley fight. And I guess somewhere along the footage, Helwani's face came up. And this was Brendan Schaub's reaction to it, which kind of led you to believe that there's definitely a problem that they have with each other, or maybe that Brendan has with him. Who knows which way around it is, but this is the clip of which kind of set the entire thing off in general. So let's play Brendan Schaub kind of reacting to the mere mention of Ariel Helwani's name and the Fight Companion show they did the other day.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a dog, man.
Oh, hey, so I see Ariel's there.
Yeah,
How's that going over?
and I'm here.
No. But how's
How
that?
do you think he got the job?
but how's that going
I didn't
over?
want to do it.
Jesus Christ.
God bless them. I don't know. Showtime does their thing. I do my thing, man.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'll sleep in my
Chat's
bed tonight. I'm with you guys. Those
Rampage, you
boys,
like
are in
Ariel?
Cleveland.
Yeah.
What a bizarre way to answer a question that had nothing to do with him. Again, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not balls deep in MMA. I'm not balls deep in journalists and stuff. I know a couple. I'm not that knowledgeable in that kind of stuff. But from what I understand, Ariel Helwani recently left ESPN, right? It was under some dubious circumstances. No one really knows why exactly happened. Then he left and he announced all these amazing projects he was launching, a Substack. He was doing a million shows. Like, he was getting to the bag, and Ariel Helwani is getting to the fucking bag. So big up him. But there was obviously something happened with ESPN, because no one walks away from such a prestigious sports networking company for the most part, right? It's a job for life. They pay well, whatever, cool. So it felt like to me, Josh Thompson was asking, oh, what's going on with Ariel Helwani? How's that going over? More so because he's now obviously being the main kind of anchor guy for Showtime, who's a rival to ESPN, as opposed to Brendan thinking Josh is asking him about Ariel because of whatever's going on with them. He was asking, well, how's that going over with him and the ESPN guys? Not how's it going over with you. Do you know what I mean? Or did I catch it wrong? Let's play it one more time.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a dog, man.
Oh, hey, so I see Ariel's there.
Yeah,
How's that going over?
and I'm here.
No.
And I'm here. It's like, yeah, no. He's not talking about you. He's about to say, no, I'm not being you. I mean, how's it going over with the people at ESPN, the ESPN brass? Like, how's it going with them? How do you think they see that? Do they see it as a spit in the face? Do they wish him well? Like, is that him kind of thumbing his nose at the network? What's going on? That's what he's basically saying. He's not saying, oh, how do you feel about it, Brendan? Right? But he's so wound up about it that he jumps in and says that.
No. But how's
How
that?
do you think he got the job?
but how's that going
I didn't
over?
want to do it. God bless them. I don't know. Showtime does their thing. I do my thing, man.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'll sleep in my
Chat's
bed
going.
tonight. I'm with you guys. Those
Rampage, you like
boys are in
Ariel?
Cleveland.
Okay.
So again, only from the Fighting the Kid subreddit I know this. So allegedly, and they've all been right. They've been right with some of their takes and some of their guesses and estimations from a while back, and it's been amazing to see. So I remember back in the day, or maybe a few months ago, some people on the Fighting the Kid subreddit were hypothesizing or theorizing that allegedly Brendan's time at Showtime was coming to an end. I don't know why it was, what triggered them, or what kind of sparked their interest, but a lot of them were like, nah, something's not right here. And I think he was, at that time, he might have been mentioning that he was going through negotiations. I don't know what happened. Then, of course, somewhere out the blue, he then announces he's launching this Thick Boy Studios thing. He buys or rents out this massive studio. He's going to do these other shows. And it feels like he's sort of slowly but surely transitioning his audience from Showtime, Brendan Schaub, below the belt, to like Thick Boy Studios, this sort of like kind of lifestyle-y, fight companion thing that he's doing. It's like a purposeful thing, because you'd think if this show was such a great idea and it was a great piece of content that you could obviously get some eyes onto the network, why wouldn't Showtime just want to bring it in-house? Why wouldn't they say, hey, that show that you're doing, that Fight Companion, just bring it over here. Why are you doing it on your own? Let's put some money behind it, some production, and get it kind of ramped up. But we like what you're doing. We like you as a talent. Let's just keep you in-house. Let's not have you do your own thing on YouTube, right? That would be the natural conclusion. So that was what you kind of thought. And then at the same time, Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, BC, big up him, this real CEO of the place. He, if I'm not mistaken, I think those two guys, were starting to get more responsibilities, more airtime on Showtime in general, right? Especially when it comes to boxing, especially when it comes to MMA. And then, of course, Ariel Helwani leaves ESPN, and then he quickly announces he's launching all these 1,000 different projects that he's got, securing the bag, and then he ends up at Showtime for this Logan Paul and this Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley fight. He does well. Everyone really impressed with how he kind of carries himself. He asks great questions. He does a great face-to-face and just kind of gets a lot of kind of positive reaffirmation on social. And it feels like you know, especially with the lack of coverage we see of Brendan at that one and the fight before, I forgot which one it was, but the one with BC and Luke, and you know, Brendan Schaub wasn't around on that one either. It felt like the theories that the Fire and the Kid were basically hypothesizing were coming true, right? They were definitely coming true. It felt like slowly but surely Showtime were either pushing Brendan away to the side, or he was purposely stepping aside in order to allow those guys to shine. Who knows what way you interpret it. So then that happened, and then if I'm not mistaken, what was it? Yeah, so that was one thing that they theorized, and then there was a couple of jabs here and there he'd throw about, you know, Ariel, you know, not being liked by the UFC, and it felt like he was oddly defending flipping Dana White, who used to kind of hate. So there's some strange things happening behind the scenes, but it does seem like they were definitely on the money. Anyway, it seems like this clip got to Ariel Helwani somehow, and he then decided to reply back to what Brendan Schaub was basically insinuating on his show by saying the following thing when he started it. I think it's a pretty good way to kind of open your show personally. So let's just leave it small so it doesn't mess up my computer. Let's just play this. Bear with me 1 second. Bish Bash Bosh, yes, let's play this now.
1,000%. And while we're talking about lies, Brendan went on his show and talked about me being a nightmare to work with, me being a bad teammate. He's heard from a million of different people that I'm the worst to work with. Talk to my colleagues. Talk to my friends if that's the truth. Talk to the production team if that's the truth. I've worked very hard to try and be the best teammate and colleague possible to help people out along the way. And so again, talk about me being a bad journalist all you want. Bad show all you want. But don't talk about what's inside here. Don't question the kind of person that I am. Try to take me down because you may be jealous or because you have some other bizarre reason for talking about me as a person when you don't even know me. I don't go personal. I don't talk about you like that. I have nothing to do with you. Leave my name out of your mouth, especially when you want to lie about me. You want to talk about my show being great? You want to talk about me being the 10-time journalist of the year? All you want. But don't lie about me. Don't talk about how you gave me gigs, that I should be thanking you. Don't lie, because I will come after you. I will respond. And so I did get a text from him this morning, and I said, I appreciate it, but now do it on your show.
Okay, cool, nice.
It's very easy to apologize privately. Be a man and do it on the air.
Nice,
For
Ariel.
the lies about 199, for the lies about me being a bad teammate, for the lies about the Jake Paul fight, be a man, stop lying, stop making up stories, and apologize on the air. And he said he would, and I'm looking forward to that. Stop talking about me, because those guys have been doing it for a long time, and I know what it's rooted in. But High Road Helwani ain't no more. You're looking at the Helwani era. All right, this is independent Helwani.
Okay, that's a bit cringe, but that's good, isn't it? That's a good thing, I guess. Resolution-wise, that Brendan did reach out and apologize because he did look a bit terrible. But I wonder what goes through someone's head. Imagine if that's true. Imagine if he was told on his end. No, because let's pass this through. Most probably, what happened, because from what we saw on that first clip, Brendan basically insinuated that the only reason why Ariel got the job at Showtime, covering, boxing, whatever it may be, is because Brendan didn't want to do it. Cool. It wouldn't surprise me because Hollywood is flipping horrendous, right? And agents and managers are always trying to, blow smoke up their clients' asses. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody in Brendan Schaub's team told him that they got word directly from Showtime that they wanted him to do that show or whatever. He said no for whatever reason, because he feels uncomfortable, because he doesn't feel, valued. I don't know, whatever. And then he was also told, on certain terms, that if he doesn't do the show, that they're going to get Ariel to do it instead. I wouldn't surprise me if they told him that just so he can feel good, and because that those managers and agents, essentially Schaub is their client, they don't want him to throw a fit and do a Chris Benoit or anything, right? So they definitely want to keep him sweet. So they tell him that, and then he goes, and you're not meant to tell other people that. You're meant to maybe tell your friends to make yourself feel good too when you're talking to your friends. And they're like, "Oh, what are you doing here at home? I thought you were meant to be at the fight." And you say, "Oh yeah, I can't." And I kind of stepped away because I got another project, and plus I wanted to give Ariel a chance. That's what you're meant to do. You're not meant to just go around and tell everybody about it, because clearly it's going to be a lie that can easily be kind of picked apart. That's one thing. But again, you have to give the guy credit for being man enough to be like, you know what, I messed up, hands up, I'm going to apologize. So it'll be interesting to see how he does apologize in his show, whether it's a kind of backhanded apology or if it's an actual earnest, like, hey, I messed up, I got the wrong piece of information, you didn't actually say that thing that I heard that you definitely did say on your show, and I'm going to try and make amends. And then let's play the last clip, I think, which is Ariel talking on the show with, who's he talking on the show with? He's talking on the show with Aljamain Sterling, actually. Yeah, let's talk about this. This is a pretty good one because he gets really ramped up here, and you can see how negatively all this kind of bad press of him being I would say, all the leaks that he kind of get accused of, I think it mainly, all those rumors and him being a bad teammate mostly came from, was it what's his face, Dana White, innit? Dana White basically kind of started that thing of people hating Ariel, and maybe he kind of played into it too with his personality and how he goes about winding up fighters and being a little bit of a shit stirrer. But he does seem to be really annoyed here in this clip at Aljamain Sterling. You can see it's kind of starting to get to him because he doesn't want people to think he's a bad dude. I think it's all well and good people thinking you're a bit devious and being a bit conniving and trying to work an angle to make something happen, but you don't want people to think you're a bad actor. You know what I mean? That's probably the worst thing. So this is Ariel Helwani talking to Aljamain Sterling on his show, and he kind of sets the record straight once and for all.
I know for a fact.
Well, Ariel, it might be deserved on your end.
Wow. Oh, really? How so, Aljo? How so? Do tell.
From how I hear the story.
Oh,
like the breaking the news stuff. I don't know.
Let's go. Let's go.
I don't know the whole details.
Who's your
so I don't wanna
source?
speak on it.
Brendan Schaub? Who's your source?
Well, I just heard it from Joe Rogan talking about it.
Oh, Joe Rogan. Okay. Let me say it once. Can I clear the air for the 50th time about that one? What Joe Rogan has spewed is 1,000% false. What Brendan Schaub has then parroted is 1,000% false. Rogan's source is Dana White. Brendan's source is Joe Rogan. I think you know me long enough. I think Quinta and Ray and Chris and everyone on the team know me long enough, regardless of anyone else you want to talk. If someone tells me something off the record, and I'm sure you've told me things off the record, if I go out and report it, I should be done. There is no way that I would practice that kind of journalism and still be here 13 years later. If you tell me something in confidence and I report it, I should never be talked to again. I should be outlawed. I should be banned from covering the sport, any promotion. That never happened, the story that Rogan told. That never happened, the story that Brendan talked about a couple of weeks ago. 1,000% false. And in fact, it's very damaging to my reputation because that's the kind of stuff that a hack journalist does. I'm not a hack journalist. I got that the same way I get any piece of news.
Come on, Ariel. You're a bit hacky, my friend. It's all right, though. You know what I mean? You lean into it. You've used it to your advantage. If anything, this evolution of Ariel has been pretty awesome to see, right, over the years, and how he's kind of turned into this guy. And if anything, it's been interesting also to see that fans are starting to like him again. He was quite, I won't say hated, but people tended to kind of tolerate Ariel. Now it seems like he's got an actual real fandom. People, love the guy and want to see him do well, which is great for most content creators to get that sort of, kind of adulation online is definitely more beneficial than kind of being despised and derided like a DSP or whatever. But, let's be honest, you are a bit of a hack, dude. It is what it is.
Confirmed it with sources. Not a single person ever told me, don't report this. We brought you in a corner. That whole BS story that Rogan spewed and has somehow been like regurgitated and recycled is a lie. It almost makes me wonder what other things Rogan is lying about on his show, but that's a different story for a different day. All I'm saying is that's 100% lie and very irresponsible for a guy like that with a platform like that to talk about me like that without knowing that side of the story. The only reason why he...
That's the one thing as well with Rogan to touch upon that I've never really understood. Rogan's a kind of guy that was, he got on stage and basically ripped, what's his name? Carlos Mencia, a new one, for stealing jokes. He's very, stern on that. He wants, comedians to get paid fairly. He puts comedians, crappy ones, on his show just so he can give them a look so they can boost their platform, maybe get their booking fees increased, maybe showcase their skills on there. He's a really good guy in that way, right? He gives back in that way. But for whatever reason, when it comes to the fighter pay with the UFC and how diabolically bad Dana treats his fighters, the fact that he picks fights, the fact that he's got favorites, the fact that he manipulates them, gaslights them, and puts them in a position where essentially they're fighting against each other. They're fighting each other in order to earn a decent wage. It's just horrendous. Just the other week, who was that female fighter who was talking about she was, overdrawn in her account by like $40 or something, and most of the money was going to go pay for coaches anyway, but she was just happy to get some cash in her pocket. Insane stuff, right? These guys and girls are risking life and limb going into an octagon to go and face somebody in their underwear where they might die, and they're getting paid like 30 grand when they got most of it has to go to taxes and pay coaches. But Joe Rogan doesn't have a word to say about it. Zilch. He keeps his mouth completely shut. But then other things he just rabbits and talks about willy-nilly with no regard whatsoever. It's just one of the things that's always blown my mind, how somebody can be opposed to Carlos Mencia but then also be best friends with Dana White. It doesn't compute in my head. It really doesn't.
He told that story was because Dana White was trying to justify the stupid banning, and then they went out and tried to make me out to be the bad guy. So that's a lie. Produce another story where I did that, you ain't gonna find one. So I just want to say nothing is justified in terms of my situation. That never happened. Don't listen to those guys. You feel me?
No, I will say in Rogan's defense, I'm pretty sure he does clarify, like, this is what I heard. And
Yeah,
if this
guess what? That's a stupid fucking reason to say a story when you're talking about someone's career, right?
Exactly.
This is what I heard. This guy went out irresponsibly and is dealing with the repercussions. No. Find out the truth and then come talk about it. I'm sorry I get fired up about it, but you can understand, as someone who has dealt with the repercussions of people speaking irresponsibly on your behalf, it's a stupid freaking reason. And Brendan, for regurgitating it 5 years later, I've had my own issues with him. In fact, I'll break some news. He just reached out to me this morning, Brendan, and apologized to me for regurgitating false lies. False lies. That's redundant about me. And I said, thanks for reaching out, Brendan. I look forward to you doing it on the air the same way you said lies about me. You should probably go on the air and apologize and rectify. So I wait for that day. Until then, God bless.
And then again, you can't blame the guy, innit? Big up Ariel Helwani. It looked like he dunked on Brendan and he won that back and forth. I just don't understand why they've even got an issue. Again, most of it seems to me, stems from the fact that Brendan looks like his time at Showtime's coming to an end for whatever reason. Again, if you were being fair to the guy, just to be fair, it is a pretty good gig. I'd assume most of these production company network TV deals, or is that what they're called? Production companies, whatever they're called, right? They're a network, right? It's a TV network or whatever, a sports organization, whatever Showtime is. I'd assume they pay fairly well. I'd assume you might get a flat rate, you might get paid per show, but it's a fairly decent wage, enough for you to probably hire a couple of videographers to get a studio, to have a new wardrobe. Maybe you have a budget for wardrobe. Like, it's a fairly lucrative position. You could use that clout and that notoriety and name to kind of leverage other deals. I'm sure that thing works well in your career, for sure. So Brendan has a good reason to be a little bit pissed off and annoyed why he doesn't have that gig, for sure. Don't get me wrong. But let's call a spade a spade. He has to be honest too and look himself in the mirror. The guy does zero prep for his, below the belt show. He basically turns up and reads stuff on Wikipedia, reads fight cards off of Wikipedia. Chin throws up some news from him from MMAfighting.com or whatever, the hot news topics. He doesn't really research them or read about them from other sources beforehand. Doesn't really form a, cohesive hot take or whatever that can maybe, get some traffic or maybe stir some conversation, just regurgitates what everyone else is saying. Sometimes he might, do the opposite thing. But for the most part, that show is probably one of his most low effort shows, and he probably gets paid the most to do it. I'll assume. Let's say, maybe because of Fighting the Kid, he owns it more, but in terms of someone paying you a salary, he gets paid more to do it, even though he does it only twice a week or once. I don't know how often he does below the belt, and it's low effort. So for him to assume that he was going to keep that gig for a long time just because your Brendan Schaub is idiotic. I think if anything, he should have just done the job, banked the money, and just rid it out until the wheels fell off. But he's kind of he felt maybe a little bit entitled, maybe because he was one of the first people. It felt like celebrity kind of talking heads combat sports people to go on Showtime. He kind of maybe gave him some legitimacy. I don't really know what he feels like in his head, but I just don't get the jealousy of it, because they're not even in the same league, innit? Because Brennan will never do what Ariel does because it requires too much work, or what Luke and Thomas and BC do because it requires too much work. He kind of likes being the kind of laid back, talking in a bar about the UFC kind of thing. He kind of loves it. So he should just let those guys do whatever they're doing. And if Showtime want to take it in this direction because they don't like the, celebrity flashy guy thing anymore, then cool. If they want the dork journalists to do the shows, then let them do it. Because I don't know about you guys, but I thought Helwani did a pretty good job at that, Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley face to face. But yeah, I thought that was pretty amazing. Let's see if Brendan Schaub ends up, apologizing on the show, as Ariel hopes he will. And he'll probably throw in a couple of jabs here and there, because why not? And this ring will probably rumble on. Maybe Joe Rogan will apologize to him as well in the future. We never know. But yeah, let's move into the chat. Let's see what you guys have been saying quickly, because this stuff's not coming up on my screen. What's he saying here? Oh yeah, big up AC here in the chat. Facts says, I believe Ariel recently, after leaving ESPN, addressed Brendan Schaub because Brendan on his Below the Belt show said nobody on ESPN liked Ariel. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Sebastian. AC said again, AC said that Brendan doesn't like to share media space. He's got that. He can't have all the space and the pie mentality. Sephora says, Tresbishi, the whiny is funny, but cumbersome alike. I'm glad your lack of empathy and detached nature at times. This gossip is also part of the sub-elite public narcissism. It makes the elite decision makers look bad and accountable for others' actions. Why should others be accountable for the medical use? AC says, hello Zinga. Okay, it's cringe. Oh yeah, Sephora's on a mad one, bruv. You're talking about some mad things out here, brother. But keep it up in the chat. I appreciate your engagement. What is all this stuff from fluoroplazamol, ceftonanil, deladil, and other chemicals with intimidating public images? How often do people benefit? I don't know about all that stuff. Sephora says, what if he says here, flat rate per episode and then royalties per number of times viewed on demand or aired on network for leads on high lead creatives. Okay, is that how they get paid on network TV? That makes sense why Brendan's angry then, like why he's pissed off, because that's a pretty decent gig. You get a flat rate and you also get paid per episode, and you get royalties per views or times it gets made. So you can make bank on a show that is a hit for sure. Brendan's not intelligent enough to be that guy. Can't be trusted. Paris yapping about political sensitive. Take your place. Respect medical. Yeah, cool, man. Big up Ariel Helwani though. I think he won that little tussle. I'm not going to lie. I think he won that little tussle. Let's go back over here. Let's talk about this. Have you guys seen this news? This is pretty funny. Elizabeth Holmes, I'm not sure if some of you know, obviously the documentaries about her podcast shows have been pretty amazing, but essentially she was this kind of hot ticket, entrepreneur in the, what would you call it, in the startup scene. She was launching a startup where essentially you could analyze people's blood through a prick, and you could analyze that and then kind of lead to many medical advances and breakthroughs and whatnot. She put on this fake voice, she walked a particular way, she wore a black turtleneck, talked at flipping TED Talks and whatnot, and raised a bunch of money, and in the end the idea was nothing but a scam, right? So now she's obviously going to trial for swindling many investors at hundreds of millions. If I'm not mistaken, the guy that owns the Daily Mail, what's his name, Rupert Murdoch or something, one of those kind of guys, supposed to be invested $120 million into her, and obviously he's probably never going to see that money ever again, but still they're all taking her to court and they want to get their money back. So this development has been pretty interesting in this news, right? This has been courtesy of is it going to move? It's going to move. Damn it. Let's go back. But this is courtesy of Yahoo News. Let's pop it back on there. If it loads. Yes, it does. It says, Elizabeth Holmes plans to accuse ex-boyfriend and former business partner of abuse during her criminal trial, claiming he threw sharp objects at her and controlled her of how she ate and dressed, right? So somehow this young lady who fooled everybody into believing that she was the reincarnation of Steve Jobs, right? Basically the female Steve Jobs, is somehow going to blame a man for the fact that she's a piece of shit. Like, isn't that typical, right? Isn't that typical? Maybe that's a trait of being a narcissist, the fact that you can never accept personal responsibility. So it's her sort of pivoting away from it was my fault to no, you guys made me be this way. You see somebody, like I always mention all the time, but you see somebody like a Dark Side Phil does all the time. Dark Side Phil must be one of the most intriguing people to follow on social media, one of the kind of, pièce de résistance when it comes to locals, right? And he finds it impossible to come, he can't even wrap his head around the idea that maybe he's not as popular as he needs to be on YouTube vis-a-vis how he was on Twitch, because he just doesn't make enough compelling content on YouTube for him to be popular enough, right? I think he could probably get away with that kind of rambly, kind of interactive stream that he does on Twitch, but he can't get away with that same content on YouTube. He hasn't really pivoted, he hasn't really kind of evolved his content in any way, shape or form. So he will do everything. He'll blame everybody under the sun. He'll blame, detractors. He'll blame his parents. He'll blame ex-friends. He'll blame, again, Twitch. Whatever, anybody can blame, apart from looking in the mirror and saying, maybe I am where I am because of the actions that I have done in my own life. It's never his fault. And this is a great example of it. It's never their fault as a narcissist. It's always someone else's fault that's led to the action that, is basically being scrutinized. So it says the following. Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of Theranos, plans to accuse her former boyfriend and ex-business partner of intimate partner abuse as part of her defense strategy. Oh yeah, and by the way, if guys needed any encouragement or any kind of direction as to why it's important to be very successful in whatever field that you're in, and then look, it's important to be successful in whatever field you're in, and then try and look for a mate, a partner, someone to start a family with, as opposed to trying to start a family before you've got a career, because somebody that looks like that shouldn't be getting someone who looks like that. Don't get me wrong, Elizabeth Holmes isn't flipping Scarlett Johansson, but she's a good looking woman, right? How does somebody that looks like a dentist somewhere in some middle America town end up with a woman like that? It's because he's got money, right? And because he's obviously very successful, very well educated, all that good stuff, it makes him a decent mate. So try and get yourself success before you try and get a mate. It's difficult to do, but try. It continues. It says Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos, plans to accuse her boyfriend, ex-business partner, of intimate partner abuse as part of her defense strategy in the up-and-coming fraud trial. Holmes will contend that Ramesh Sunny, right? His nickname is Sunny. Ramesh Sunny Balaween, former Theranos vice chairman and CEO and president, threw sharp objects at her and controlled how she ate and dressed, according to new federal court filings released on Saturday. Look, this woman's probably taller than him, right? And his nickname is Sunny. Right, his nickname is Sonny. He's probably the prince of his family, right? He's probably the apple in his mum's eye. He's the one that everybody looks at and thinks, oh my God, look how successful he is. He's gone to America and made big money. He sends back loads of money back home. He's probably, again, the mainstay of his family. Do you think he's going to go around throwing sharp objects at her like he's an episode of Mad Men? Probably not. So she's probably lying. But just imagine the cognitive dissonance that needs to exist for you to somehow equate your extramarital kind of arguments that you're having at home as to why you swindled your investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars. Imagine trying to make that stuff equate. Just imagine trying to make some sort of link that appeared there out of nowhere. Even if it did happen, just imagine it did happen. Your boyfriend's being you black and blue. So is that the reason why you swindled my man from the Daily Mail out of 120 M's? Really? Come on, man. We continue. Balaween exercised control over Holmes in what was a decade-long campaign of physical abuse, according to Holmes' lawyer Lance Wade and Kevin Downey. She also accuses him of sexual abuse. The document said, of course, she accused him of sexual abuse. Of course. Holmes will contend during her trial, which starts on Tuesday in California, that Balwani monitored her calls, texts, and emails, impacting her state of mind, including the decision to turn blind eye to the failures of the blood testing startup, which was supposed to be revolutionary medical testing. So not only is she trying to blame her distress and her kind of lack of mental clarity on his abuse, which obviously if it happened that would be true, but she's also trying to use that as a reason as to why she took her eye off the ball and wasn't aware that her machine that was meant to analyze blood didn't actually work as intended, and instead of analyzing blood it made fucking blackcurrant juice or some shit. Do you know what I mean? This woman's on a mad one. It says U.S. Department of Justice charged Holmes and Ballaween with 9 counts of wire fraud in 2018, accusing them of defrauding investors, medical professionals, and customers. Both plead not guilty. The funny thing is, most likely, she's not going to see inside of a jail anyway, right? So what's most likely going to happen to her? She's probably going to get off on it, or she's probably going to have to pay a high penalty. She might have to do some, I don't know, she'll do some rehabilitation thing, but I find it very unlikely that she's going to be in handcuffs and being, escorted to a prison somewhere. I just don't think it's going to happen. Before her arrest and downfall at Theranos, Holmes was one of the only handful of women founders in Silicon Valley running a unicorn or 1 billion plus startup. Theranos purported to detect medical conditions like cancer and high cholesterol by using proprietary lab tech on a small amount of customers' blood. The company had raised over 700 million from investors to build the tech. Imagine believing that someone, I don't know. I guess if you're a startup investor or you're an angel investor in general, sometimes these things cross your desk and it really could be the next thing, right? Because some people would have thought, who would have thought Uber would be what it was, right? When it crosses your deck and you hear people saying, oh, we're going to connect a country full of drivers with a country full of passengers, and they're going to be able to take people from point A to point B. It's going to revolutionize how people travel, how people network and communicate with their city. It's going to empower a whole host of people to be entrepreneurs and take, charge of their own careers, and I don't know, whatever, get people to driving. You can never see too far, but surely looking at her, hearing how she speaks, and looking at that machine and what they purport to do, your alarm bell should have been ringing pretty quickly. I would imagine so. It continues, it said, the newly released court documents show how Holmes intends to build a defense against the fraud accusations. She plans to tell the court that she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression and anxiety, which her lawyers said Holmes plans to substantiate. So she says she's got all these things. Of course, because you've been embarrassed, you've been exposed in public as being a fraud and being a liar, right? Because part of the reason why you want to be one of these big startup tech guru guys and Silicon Valley founders, right, is for the clout. Obviously, the money is amazing, but you want the recognition. You want your peers. You want people you look up to come and admire you. You want to go and get invited on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's what I wish, actually thinking about that, I wish Fairness was around long enough for her to have gone on a Joe Rogan podcast, because we would have got some great sound bites that would have just lasted for years and years to come. We would have got some amazing memes of her like, yeah, how she talks to that weird flipping, put on deep voice. Damn, I wish she wouldn't have went on there. It continues, said lawyers also said Holmes will detail how Helwani often isolated her, was combative towards her, and was often physically present in her office. All traits, the document said, are abuse tactics used by abusers. Lols. Helwani, through his lawyer, denied these allegations. According to the court document, it says here, and I quote, Ms. Holmes' allegations are deeply offensive to Helwani, devastating to him personally, says Jeffrey Coppersman, Helwani's lawyer, calling the accusations salacious and inflammatory. Coppersman said, Ms. Holmes' evidence seeking to establish her innocence would require him to defend against not only the government's case, but to defend against allegations as well, because her allegations are inflammatory and they cannot be left unrebutted before the jury. I would love it if he was able to just provide cold hard evidence, like he's got like a camera that he kept in the home secretly that filmed their entire existence from the moment they get together, from the moment, the case happened. That would be incredible, because you could just see just nothing but love in that household, right? Him talking to his parents on FaceTime, her, on a computer pretending to work. Like, it could be amazing to see all that stuff. Anyway, it continues. Helwani faces a separate fraud trial next year. Holmes' lawyers also emphasized how the 31-year-old, she's 31. Holy shit. The 31-year-old lacked the intent and decisive to lacked the intent to deceive despite her exaggerated claims, and instead fully believed her company was saving lives. So they're trying to say that she was too honest. That's what they're saying. She was too honest. Oh my God. Holmes is likely to testify at the trial itself, according to her lawyers. The truth about her machines not working surfaced after a Wall Street Journal journalist, John Carreyrou, published a report in 2015 that her blood testing machines was faulty. It was followed by a statement by the U.S. Secretary of Exchange accusing Holmes of conducting an elaborate years-long of fraud. Prosecution said she knew from the beginning, but by September 2018, Fairness was shut down. Fairness found her faced up to 2 decades in prison on fraud, and conspiracy charges about the accuracy of the capability of the machines. Her trial starts August 31st in San Jose, California, after being repeatedly delayed for various reasons, from the pandemic to her childbirth, which people say she got pregnant on purpose to delay it, but who knows. Read the original article here. So yeah, most likely she's not going to go to prison, but still, this woman's 31 years old. So when did she found it? When she was like in her 20s. No wonder everyone was wanking over her, innit? Because if this was actually true, what her machine could do, and she did end up being the second reincarnation of Steve Jobs with the flipping turtleneck and the put on artificial voice, it would have been pretty awesome. But she ended up being a fraud, and everyone ended up getting duped. So what can you do? What can you do? Let's move away from there. What's that? Is it going? Oh, it's not moving. It's not doing the one. Oh, okay. I have to do this annoying thing now. Okay, let's take this off. Force quit. Let's go back to the stream, and now I have to put this. Okay, hope that works. There, stuff. So let's go to chat. See what people are saying. Endless truth there. Yeah. For whatever reason, can't trust the parrots. Sebastian says, I wonder what it's like to make that decision to try and be a big scammer on a big stage. True. Decade long. Well, I guess that covers a scamming period. Yep. James says, you're on good form. Apple of his mum's eye. Matt Reese says, I'm behind 13 minutes, but Ariel swearing is hilarious. And AC says, the home cam. Yeah, for sure, AC. You know. But yeah, man, I don't know. Sebastian said, I wonder what it's like to make that decision to try and be that big of a scammer on that big of a stage. To be honest, I think it makes sense. I think in general, a lot of people out there, I think most people obviously want money, right? Money is what makes the world go round. But I think a lot of people, if your money needs were basically met and you're able to look after your family, I think the most, what they say, I think the most amount of money people actually want to live like a comfortable life is like 70 grand, right? So if you're able to have a comfortable life on 70 grand, you're able to kind of, pay a mortgage of a fairly decent home. You're able to take your partner out for a couple of meals a week. You can go on a few decent holidays in the year. You've got a decent car that you lease, right? All those things are looked after. Then what? What else is getting you out of bed? And I think another thing that'll get people out of bed is the idea that you have the respect and the admiration of your peers, right? People you work with in your industry. People look up to you. You're somebody that they can go to for advice, somebody that they want to hear when it comes to the latest developments and evolutions and breakthroughs in your industry. That, I think, carries a lot more weight than the ability to just make money. It really, really does. You want to be in the same group of these people. You want to be on the same stage as them, talking on panels and going to conferences. I definitely understand the allure of it. And again, think about it this way, from my experience working in startups, because most of my experience employment-wise has been working in startups from, big to small ones. For the most part, everyone doesn't really know what they're doing, right? They're all kind of chancing it. They're all trying to figure it out as they go along. And obviously, you as an employee, you're kind of banking on them to figure it out so you can get a wage, but you're also willing to take the chance. And the chance is that you could get in on the ground level at this company. You could probably circumnavigate some entry requirements that you might require at other places. And you can maybe, chart your own course along that journey too. So as an employee, you are somehow trying to gain some level of notoriety out of working in those places without the money attached. So just imagine how alluring and how kind of appetizing it must be for a founder, and how kind of dizzying that fame must be to be in the same position, the same seat, or be even being spoken about in the same sense as somebody as a Steve Jobs. It can definitely drive you to do some things that you probably wouldn't think you could ever do in your life. For sure, I can definitely see it happening. So I'm not surprised that she decided to go that way, but it's just the brazen nature of it that really caught me off guard. I mean, she legitimately thought that she was going to change the world in that machine, and she knew all along that it just wasn't working. I think many accounts, if you watch I've listened to a few documentaries on podcasts. I can't remember. I think there's I forgot what it's called, the name of it, but it's a really good one. There's a really good podcast documentary about her, and I'm sure there's going to be a few more coming after the fact, and maybe a movie. But for the most part, every podcast I've listened to, documentary of her story, basically said she knew the machines were faulty and just kept going anyway. And I think she was doing that because she was doing what most startup founders do, where they figure out or realize their service or product isn't what they wanted it to be, but they hope they can just figure it out along the way, that somehow it kind of evolves and mutates into something else, or they pivot into another thing. They just want to try and figure it out along the way. And plus, you know, who's going to turn down more investment, more funding, and more ability for you to kind of walk down the street somewhere barefooted with a flipping MacBook Air under your armpit? I definitely understand the appeal. I don't get it, but I definitely understand the appeal. What else do we have here? Let's move on. Oh, let's talk about this one. This is just go back to Rogan. More Rogan talk, because why not? What else people saying in the chat here? Of course, if you're tuning in, make sure you're smashing a like for me, please. The likes are a bit low, so if you are in here, please make sure you smash the like. That'll be more than appreciated. Smashing likes just make sure that, you know, the algorithm notices people are engaging with the content and they're enjoying it. So if you're engaging and you're enjoying it, then please do me a favor and smash the like. I'll be much appreciated. It only take you a couple of minutes. Bang that for me. Bang that for me. So next on the list, right? Next on the list is this article courtesy of Dexerto, right? Let's get it up on the screen. I have to lower this a little bit. Hopefully it works. This article courtesy of Dexerto says the following: Joe Rogan guest not benefiting as much from Spotify exclusivity, right? Which I'm a little bit dubious on in general, but I get the whole premise around it. So let's read this article. It says Joe Rogan might be benefiting massively from his move to Spotify, but new stats have shown that the podcast guests aren't getting as shown the same love as before. For years, Joe Rogan podcasts could be found pretty much everywhere where podcasts were from, and there was a highly entertaining video version of events on YouTube. Though that all changed back in May 2020 when the UFC commentator penned a mega deal with Spotify to make his Jerry podcast exclusive to them. The move is obviously a massive for Joe Rogan, but there have been bumps along the way for fans. In terms of his guests and formats, nothing has changed too much. He and his guests sit down and chat about everything from current affairs to weird and wonderful, but it appears that Rogan's influence might be waning a touch. According to an in-depth investigation from The Verge, Rogan's guests are not seeing the same same before when it comes to new followers and overall interest. Using guests who had less than 500,000 followers on Twitter, the study looked at how big the difference is for how many new followers that guests were getting before and after the exclusive switch. As they found, guests who appeared before it moved to Spotify would get anywhere from 4,000 to 18,000 new followers. However, after the move, the average gain dipped to around 2,000. Additionally, Rogan's YouTube channel also saw a massive loss in average subscribers, dropping from 265,000 new subscribers per month to around 100,000. Now, I would argue some of these statistics because I think a lot of these people weren't analyzing this stuff when Joe was doing what he was doing prior to Spotify. I think it'll be interesting if somebody was analyzing all the numbers of all the guests that appeared, because that's a problem. Because a lot of the guests that appear on the Joe Rogan podcast don't get announced, or most of the guests, or all the guests don't get announced beforehand. You only see them when the podcast goes live. So there's no way of ascertaining what their follower count was prior to them being on the show and what it was once the episode dropped. You don't know. And also, I've always thought, because again, podcasting is like this, it doesn't really matter how popular the podcast is. If the guest and the conversation isn't interesting, people just won't listen and won't care. They'll just move on. There's been plenty of guests on the GRE who've been really famous, who've had a fairly interesting or compelling story, but just were terrible on the podcast and it just didn't go anywhere. So it's hard to say just because you're this person and you go in there that it should be a net benefit for you. It probably won't. And again, I think these figures have been fobbed. And also you have to understand that it's a bit of a walled garden. Not everyone has Spotify. It's different than being exclusive on another platform. If Spotify is a bit of a walled garden, you have to have it to listen to it. And are you suddenly going to get a Spotify membership just listen to the jury alone solely? You're probably not. So that's a bit of a skewed stat in my opinion. It continues. It says that might indicate Rogan's podcast is simply not reaching the same amount of ears now that it's only Spotify's platform, but it's unknown given that the platform doesn't share that sort of data. In terms of loss in YouTube growth, that means seeing us as no longer hosting full-length shows on there. Fans have previously complained that the show begged for Rogan to go back to YouTube, but that's not going to happen given that he signs for Spotify for a few more years. Yeah, I never got the spot of the YouTube thing. I never understood why YouTube didn't go in for Joe as well and try, and basically battle for his signature together with Spotify. I think that would have been a great option, especially again considering the fact that Joe Rogan's massive on the platform of YouTube in general. There's no denying that Joe moved to Spotify definitely affected people listening to the show. Again, me as a fan, I tend to not listen to it as much as I did prior because I don't remember to go on Spotify, even though I've got an account on there and listen to a lot of music on there. So it's definitely affected the way that I consume the show. I still listen to it, but I'm not on it as much as I was maybe in the past. But I do remember a few months ago, there was some whispers, specifically on the Tuesday with Stories podcast with Mark Norman and Joe List, where they effectively said something like their agent or somebody behind the scenes told them that the Joe Rogan show isn't as big as a pop of opportunity for comedians coming up as it was in the past, which made sense again because it's on Spotify, and it kind of is maybe more trouble than it's worth considering all the hoopla around Joe Rogan at the moment to go on his show, which I thought was an interesting development, right? That we got to a point where, of course, for the most part, there's people still begging to go on the show. I'm sure Joe's DMs and Twitters and flipping SMSs must be blowing up every flipping day for people to go on that show. People will probably sell out their best friend to go on it. I'm sure it does exist, but it's interesting we reach a time in history where some people, there was a time in Joe Rogan history where people would do anything to get on the show. Now we're in a position where people are kind of speculating whether or not it's actually beneficial to go on it at all. Right, it's funny how things can change, right? Time can change all things, and I wonder if it's just mostly a Spotify thing, or if it's people generally kind of growing out of Joe as a podcast host, right? Because it happens to everybody. Everybody kind of gets it. Mark Maron got it. Whatever. Yeah, they all get it. All the OGs. You eventually, your fan base kind of turns on you. The general partners kind of turn on you, and then you get left with just your hardcore fans for the most part. And maybe that's what's going to eventually happen to Joe too. But he's done a pretty decent job so far. I think for somebody who's as wealthy as him, for as much access as he has, for somebody as generally as smart as him, because he does kind of play down his smartness a bit, which is I think a good trait. He does kind of come across as the most, I would say, level-headed of the kind of media figures out there in general. He doesn't really carry himself like a big media mogul, which he obviously is. He doesn't carry himself like somebody who's closer to a billionaire than he is a millionaire. He generally does carry himself like a bit of an everyman. Maybe it's because of his stand-up comedy career, maybe it's because of the stuff he does for UFC. I don't really know the reason, but he does do a good way to keep himself quite level-headed. And then again, considering the platform that he has, going above and beyond to give people opportunity to kind of reach a new audience and get new fans and shit, I think it's fairly cool because he doesn't need to do it. He could easily, I'm sure, make just as, not easily, but I'm sure he could get comparable views just talking to the microphone like I do himself. But he gets guests on there, obviously, to give them a voice and obviously to boost their numbers, obviously for his own kind of selfish interest because he's interested in what they have to say or what they do. And I think that's super, super cool. So I think you shouldn't be looking into going into a Joe Rogan interview just for the sole purpose because to get your followers up anyway. You shouldn't. That's a real asinine thing. That's a real asinine way to look at it. You should just be looking at it as opportunity to like, okay, cool, I like this guy, I've looked up to him, I want to meet him in real life and have a real in-depth conversation, because the truth of the matter is, unless you're his friend, it's very unlikely you're going to have the opportunity to sit there and talk to him for 3 hours uninterrupted, right? And even then, even if you're a friend, you're not going to sit there uninterrupted because he's a well-known guy. People are going to come up and say hi and stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's going to happen on a continued basis. So interesting statistics. I think they're kind of skewed, and again, I think because people hate him, they're just trying to construct as many metrics as they can to show that he's not as successful. But still, he's laughing to the bank. He's the one that got paid anywhere between 100 and 300 million to sign exclusively a podcast that he was already doing pretty easily, pretty easily, yeah. Exclusively on Spotify. He's definitely the one that won in that one. He's definitely the one that won. Let's move that. What else do we have to talk about here? Let's see what the chat's saying. AC definitely makes sense. New red camera launched at V Raptor. Some AC said, I'm not using what I'm using the live chat for anything meaningful. I love this channel and I miss it a lot. I truly believe because of the algorithms I do better next time. Cheers, brother. Sebastian says, I really have definitely listened less to the podcast since Spotify moved, even though I use Spotify on my private music app. Oh, interesting. See, that's interesting. Again, behaviors on apps are interesting, right? You use the app, use Spotify to listen to music, but then you don't listen to it listen to podcasts. So you still forget to listen to JRE, even though you're on it to listen to music. And I'd imagine people go to the commute, they go to the gym. You are engaging with it quite often, but you just forget to tap the bit that says podcast. Mad, isn't it? Another guy here says, key point on whether everyone has Spotify. True, not everyone has it in the first place, so it's definitely going to be a lot harder to get people to jump on it. So yeah, you are definitely correct on that one. What else to talk about? I think is that it, or is that it? Or is there anything more I want to speak about here before I run off? Oh yeah, let's talk about this. This is good. Well, good one. This is a pretty mad story. So let's get this on the screen. Go back on here. Bish. So it's courtesy of the BBC News. I'm not sure if some of you guys have seen this. It's concerning more of a UK type thing in terms of news. But Benjamin Mendy, a defender for Manchester City, has been charged with rape. Right? Pretty crazy to see a professional footballer who has access to, scores of women, professional footballers are so, flipping spoiled with their access to women that they even have a particular subset of girls that are kind of named after them, that chase them, right? In terms of wags, right? Wives and girlfriends are kind of grouped under, they're basically named that because of footballers. So they have access to all these young ladies, and still, getting charged with rape is just so heinous. So the BBC article says the following. Manchester footballer Benjamin Mendy has been charged with rape. The 27-year-old defender has been charged with 4 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault, Chester police said. The charges relate to 3 complaints over the age of 16 are allegedly taking place between October 2020 and August of this year. So he was allegedly raping last year all the way until this year. Mad guy. Mr. Mendy from Prestbury has been remanded in custody and will appear at Chester Magistrates Court in Friday. Imagine all them mandem on the wing, right? In whatever court in whatever prison they're in, because most young kids in England especially watch football. Waking up one day in their cell and then finding out that Benjamin Mendy's down the wing. Just imagine. The left back has played for last year's Premier League champions since 2017, when he joined from Monaco for a reported 52 million. A police spokesman said the Cheshire Constable and the Crown Prosecution Service would like to remind everyone that the criminal proceedings against Mendy are live, and he has a right to a fair trial. Manchester City said the defender, who plays for the French national team, had been suspended pending an investigation. The matter is subject to legal proceeding, and the club is therefore unable to make further comment until process is complete. The crazy thing about this is that Benjamin Mendy played the first game of the Premier League season, right? He played the first game. He was involved in the pre-season. He trained and all that. And his club knew all along that he had this crazy case hanging over his head where he's been accused of rape by 4 different women or plaintiffs. I don't know how do you pass that one out. It says here 4 counts of rape on 1 count of sexual assault. 3 complaints. Okay, so 3 people have accused him of rape and sexual assault, right? And they're over the age of 16. Like, imagine having that hanging over your head and you're still playing football. Imagine having it over your head and your club is still picking you for the first game of the season. Absolutely nutty behavior. But to be completely honest, I'm also kind of happy that it happened that way. It's a weird thing to say, but I think this is how cancel culture should be dealt with, right? I think until charges get brought forward and until criminal procedures get brought forward, legal procedures get brought forward, you should be able to go about living your life, making a living, putting food on the table, looking after your family, and whatever it may be. Until that moment comes, you should be able to do that. I don't like the fact that in cancel culture nowadays, what ends up happening is that an allegation comes out, someone writes a letter, someone writes a blog, an op-ed or something, and then suddenly your entire career gets ripped to pieces or gets taken away from you, right? Your ability to make money, to earn a living, to put your kids through college, to sustain yourself gets taken away from you instantly just because of one person's story, right? That they read, that they kind of published in their blog. Don't get me wrong, the story could be true, it could be factual, there could be a lot of, there could be a lot of truth to what you're saying, but I honestly think the best way to deal with all those things, the best way, the fairest way for all parties would be to say, until legal proceedings are brought forward in some way, shape or form, any professional obligation that you have or job or whatever gig, if you're at New York Times, if you're you should keep that gig. You shouldn't have to resign. You shouldn't have to get fired publicly and shamed and all that stuff, because I feel like that stuff has far more lasting damage in your career as you go on, as opposed to the smear of getting accused of rape, which is backwards to think about it, but it really is. I think sometimes you could get found not guilty. Imagine if Mendy gets found not guilty, because he is, right? Innocent until proven guilty. This footballer is found not guilty of raping these women. This smudge doesn't leave him, right? But then the thing that doesn't leave him still is the fact that 3 women accuse him of the thing. Then when those women come out and say they share their story, go on the blogs, go on YouTube channels, maybe do a documentary, that will just follow him around, even if he's found innocent. That's the problem. So sometimes the kind of actions after the allegations are far more harsh and are far more long lasting than the actual allegation itself. That is terrible, right? Rape. You can't think of a worse crime, right? If he's guilty, bury him under the prisons and throw the key in the oceans, right? Do you know what I mean? Heinous, disgusting. But also, let's just say he's innocent until proven guilty, right? And he has the right to a fair trial, of course. But then let's also extend this gratitude to regular civilians in society in general. Why do people get cancelled and completely removed from society just because of somebody's one allegation, or again somebody's blog post, a Twitter thread or something? It just feels so superfluous. It just feels so mean-spirited. It just feels so lacking in empathy that you could dash someone away just off the back of that. But again, like I said, if you're the victims, or like I want to remind people, if you're the victims and you're going through this must be heinous to deal with. To see this kind of being plastered all over the place, people like myself, I wasn't sympathizing for it, but trying to give the other side of things, it must drive you insane, because you're like, you don't know what I had to go through, you don't know what I had to suffer through, and here you are talking this rubbish. I mean, I can definitely understand that side of things, but what a crazy story to be a professional footballer at the position that he's in, the access that he has, the fame, whatever, to be out here raping women is just wild. Legitimately one of the wildest things, especially thinking that you're going to get away with it. But again, I guess if you've got that kind of mind, you're not necessarily thinking clearly anyway, really, when it comes to that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? You've got some other things that are kind of populating in your whole dome, I would imagine. But yeah, I guess this is probably not going to end well. I think the latest update we've heard, or that I've seen online, was that he was remanded in custody. He was denied bail, so he's going to have to sit in prison until his court date, which makes sense, maybe because of his profile, but also isn't a good indication, because you would imagine somebody as famous and as rich as him and as high, whatever, well known, his lawyers could argue that there is no incentive for him to run, because he can't really run anywhere, right? He's Benjamin Mendy. Everyone knows what the fuck he looks like. So he's not really a flight risk in that fact. But the judge was like, nah, we're not giving you bail. You're going to sit down in prison until the court starts. So let's see what happens with that as it kind of proceeds. But it's not looking good for the guy, innit? It really isn't looking good for him. And then moving on, what people are saying in the chat here, quickly scan over before I continue. Key point I'm having, whether everyone has Spotify. True. What about YouTube Premium? You got music, right? Thanks for the show, Agostino. Peace there, peace, Sebastian. No problem. Enjoy yourself. And then I think we should head over to this bit of news. Where is it? There you go. It's here. Yeah, Irish Times. So let's head to this bit of news. Let's see if we got it here. Why isn't this thing working? I don't know why. But anyway, let's move over here. So this is courtesy of the Irish Times. It says here, Death of Irish woman in Berlin confirmed by German police, right? Super, super, super upsetting news, man. But let's quickly read it through. It says here, it is understood. German police have confirmed the death of an Irish woman in Berlin. It is understood that the woman received medical attention in a club called the Suicide Club in Friedrichshain district of the early hours of Monday morning after the club operators called paramedics. They revived the woman and brought her to a Berlin clinic where she died on Wednesday. Jesus Christ, man. Money to wear. The highs are the highs and lows are the lows, isn't it? Police said the postmortem had been carried out but they were as yet unaware of the results. The woman was close to 30, a police spokeswoman said. BZ Tabloid, citing an unnamed police source, said the woman was 25. Suicide Club in the Eastern City Centre acknowledged the death of the woman on their Instagram. It says, on the account of unforeseen and tragic circumstances of the weekend, and for the reason of respect, the Suicide Club will remain closed all weekend. The woman's parents have been informed and are receiving counselor assistance from the the Irish embassy in Berlin. Berlin has been begun to open again after months of lockdown. So the rumors are, I remember hearing about this on some forums that I frequent when it comes to techno and stuff, people talking about this, and the early rumors again, which I then heard through the comment section of a few posts, was that allegedly this lady had taken GHB in the toilets of Suicide Club, ended up feeling really bad, ended up suffering from some sort of cardiac arrest outside of a toilet, and then luckily there was some medical staff on scene who could aid her, and then by the time the people from the hospital or whatever came, they were able to revive her, take her to a clinic, and then unfortunately she passed away. So she was alive for a little bit, but unfortunately she couldn't fight anymore. And it made me think, like, such a tricky position to be in if you're a club owner, and also if you're somebody that wants to go out a lot, because you have to know in the back of your mind that this is also something that could easily happen to you. Yes, for the most part, people are safe. I try and be as safe as I can. I buy my stuff from reputable sellers, let's say, right? Try and buy them from the old verified people. Make sure they have their own pictures. You know what I mean? But for the most part, you're taking a gamble. You're ingesting stuff that's traveled, hundreds and thousands of miles. It's been, it's been the cause of many people's pain and suffering. It's got a lot of bad vibes around it. Because think about it, people don't think about it too often. Drugs has a lot of bad vibes around it. Even weed, right? There's a lot of bad vibes attached to drugs in general. It's not as if you're buying something and it's kind of free trade or whatnot, right? It's free of cruelty. It's flipping soaked in cruelty. It's drenched in cruelty. It swims in a swimming pool of cruelty or drugs that you purchase. So imagine doing that sort of stuff and just putting yourself in an environment where you're letting down your inhibitions. Again, like I mentioned in another post, we've spent, for the most parts of the world have spent, a year and a half living under some sort of lockdown during this fucking pandemic. So to go out off the back of that, not having much experience, not having much practice, and to expect yourself to be in a position or in a condition to avoid situations like this is pretty naive, isn't it? You're probably going to be in a situation like this more often than not. And I think, again, like a club, what can you do as a club? Because more often than not, if you're a Suicide Club owner or you're from Berlin, for a fact people are only coming to your club because they want to get fucked up, right? They want to get up to some freak shit, they want to listen to some sick music, but they also want to get hella fucked up. And if that's the case, and that's one of your calling cards, what do you do after somebody's untimely death? Because this only accounts for less than 0.0000% of the clientele that goes to that club in the first place. So changing your entire entry policy and how you do business based off that one person probably isn't great way to approach anything. But you also have to be sensitive of how that will affect other punters going in. I just don't know. It's just an unfortunate situation all around, man. My thoughts and feelings honestly go out to her family and friends. I can't imagine being on the highest of highs and enjoying yourself in Berlin. I'm assuming this person lives there. Maybe they went on holiday, who knows? But regardless, and then getting to a point where, unfortunately your parents and family are having to receive the phone call that no one wants to have, right? Because for the most part, I don't know. It's just so upsetting. It really fucking is upsetting, man. But I remember once being in Berghain. It was in Berghain. It might have been a couple of years ago. I was in Berghain, And this was when I was doing the whole like sober thing, and I think I went. This was my last year. No, there was a night before. No, sorry, yeah, no, it was before that. It was maybe 2019 or 2018. I went to Berghain, and I happened to be in the toilet with a few randoms, as you end up being. And I was talking to these really cool gay guys in there and a couple of girls and stuff. And I didn't even know what GHB was at that time. And again, it's only 2019, so this shows how naive I was. And we were in there doing what we were doing, chilling, having great conversations, and time just kind of rattles by. And then they got to the point where they started passing around some weird substance that I didn't really understand what was going on, and they were pouring this really clear liquid into bottle caps and then drinking it and stuff, right? And they were being very, very, what I remember from the time being there, they were being very precise, because usually when you're in the toilets and people are taking drugs, they're just, they're being quite loose and just doing whatever, and not really paying attention. They're busting jokes, stuff falling all over the place. But that was the one time I saw everyone just snap and just focus and really be still and quiet and not want to make mistakes and really be careful about how much they're dosing themselves of this thing. I was like, wow, this must be serious. And then when it got around to me, like, oh, do you want some? I was like, nah. And I was like, anyway, what the hell is this? I was like, oh, it's GHB. I was like, oh. And of course I went home, Googled it, because I didn't know what it was, because, you have to do that. Always feign ignorance and pretend you know what it is, and then Google it when you get home. We all do that. And I Googled it and I found out that it's incredibly dangerous, especially if you take above the recommended dosage. It's going to give you a good high and you go crazy, and the high is whatever, but you have to be very precise with how much you actually take, and you obviously can't drink and all that stuff. So I can only imagine. So, but then again, those people were doing it on a party thing. That was their party drug of choice, and I was just like, wow, that's like the nightmare of all parents, right? Because I guess what ends up happening for most people is that you end up having your entry drug, whatever it is, MD, weed, whatever, and then I guess the final level is getting to the GHB, heroin end of things, because the highs are much higher over there than it would be taking a couple of lines of coke or doing MD or something, right? So you kind of have to just keep chasing it, and there's no better or worse place to chase a high like that than a nightclub. They're specifically made for you to chase your high, especially Berlin ones. They cultivate them and program them in a way that just make you want to dance forever, right? They're probably the best places to go and dance. No one cares what you look like. They don't care what you're dressed like. They don't care where you're from. You just get a chance to kind of liberate yourself, let free, and just kind of flay your arms around and do whatever you want with your body. And what better way to kind of keep on doing that than charging your body up with some Class A substances? That's like the petrol that's going to keep you going throughout the entirety of the night. And sometimes you reach a point where the stuff that you were doing last year just isn't getting you where you need to get. And suddenly someone's got a bottle cap of some clear liquid that looks like, that looks like white spirit. And suddenly here you are. You know what I mean? With your top off and shit, and your boxers wrapped around your ears. Do you know what I mean? It can get crazy really, really quickly. And again, I don't know whether or not it's a bad thing or a good thing, but it's just unfortunate when you see people, hear these stories of people having such a great time and then having to suffer such harsh consequences off the back of them trying just to have a good time with their friends and family. It just seems so grossly unfair, but I guess that's life, innit? I really guess that's life. But again, RIP to a young lady. I don't know the name. No real details have come out. Hopefully they keep it that way and allow the allow the lady's family and friends to mourn her death in peace. Again, extend thoughts and feelings out to them, and just hope that this is a lesson and a heads up for people in general, just to kind of be attentive of where they go out, to look after their friends. I've kind of been on that tip a lot, to make sure that I'm not like I don't have any control of myself. I want to be in some level of control. I want to know my surroundings and have an idea of what I'm doing. I don't want to be blackout like I was when you're young. You could do that because, who cares? But at this age, especially when you consider you're going out with your friends more often, you're going to go out on your own. It's better to try to be as best of a companion as you can in those kind of circumstances. I'd imagine it's best to be a good companion. Anyway, I think that's the last topic of the show at the moment. I've been rambling on for too long. Let's see what the chat's saying. Thanks for Shaxon. I say, alright, your tolerance would be way discreet, of course. This is probably super American of me, and I don't even know because I don't think of a club as a responsible anyway. Wow, we don't have the same places like this where I live. We all have the BS drugs, but no fun place to do them. Ugh, imagine. Yeah, imagine. It can be fun, but it can also be a recipe for disaster because it can indulge all your hedonistic urges, and you can get to a point where you don't know when to say no. So be careful what you wish for, AC. Be careful what you wish for. Anyway, this is Open Tabs episode 12. This is the end of the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to have your company. If it's your first time checking out the show, please make sure you subscribe. If you like what you heard on the channel, you liked what you heard, and you want to see this show continue, then let me know by smashing that like. That would be greatly appreciated. I also have a podcast I do called the AgostinhoZinga Show that I upload on this YouTube channel. That's also available on all podcast streaming platforms. It's called the AgostinhoZinga Show. Make sure you subscribe to that show. That would be greatly appreciated. I also DJ. I got live streams that will be coming up very, very soon on this channel, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. That's going to be something that I'm definitely looking forward to be doing more often going forward, so make sure you keep an eye on that. I'm probably going to be doing those every Friday or Saturday night, the same times when I would have got booked in places, but now, post pandemic, my gigs and stuff have kind of dried up, so I'm going to just take the opportunity to kind of showcase my skills directly here on the YouTube and just kind of play music and have a bit of fun, because why not? Why the hell not? And what else I have to plug? Of course, social media. You'll find that in the show, in the description as well of this channel. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's AgostinhoZinga, all one word. Follow me on there. That would be much appreciated, so definitely do that. And that's basically it, man. It's been a real pleasure to have a company of all of you to ramble about these random topics, so thanks again for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you'll join me again for another Open Tabs very, very soon, and I'll see you guys again for another episode very soon. I'm not sure when I'll do another one. I'll just try and do them impromptu here and there, but they'll be around the same sort of time, UK and whatever. But yeah, thanks again for tuning in, man. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a fun time, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Peace.